welcome back to Sister Pays with me, Khizra Munir, and my guest today is Anjum Nida Rahman, a communication, sustainability, and corporate affairs expert with a body of experience that spans 27 years. And you were asking me why I'm nervous. I was nervous because I didn't want to get that wrong. And you got and I was going through your profile and your bio, and Anjum has done so much work. But none of that is how I met Anjum. I met Anjum recently because you are now an entrepreneur who runs her own brand called Local Bites. And it's all about sort of reclaiming taste and yumminess in healthy food. Why should healthy food not be yummy? So where did it start from, Anjum?
So it's a personal journey.
Yeah.
I went through, in the last 10 years, I had a child, my marriage broke up, and nobody gets married if you get divorced, right?
Yeah.
So, it was just a sad period. I moved from Islamabad to Karachi, which was a huge change because I lived there for over 18 years. And I turned into, as a very dear friend of mine put it, a fat cow.
Oh.
And a very kind, I was working for a fashion brand, and the two didn't really stay. I used to model in the night.
Well, I can see that. I can see where that's coming from.
I saw that part of me again, which I think was buried way deep inside. But sometimes what I realized is that you can eat yourself thin. And then when I went into the market, I saw that obviously I love my brownies. I love food. I come from a Hyderabadi family. My grandmother, Madrasi Hyderabadi, and from my father's side from Biriwalas. And the food that we eat is so rich, right? But it's also full of ghee. But I knew that there was a way of actually making it so that you can eat it, and yet it has had benefits as well. So I started experimenting. And last year I was in Dubai for 6 months for work, and I started seeing, and I did some courses also on it, and I studied about nutrition in COVID.
Yeah.
So then I started creating cookies and brownies, and a friend of mine, again, 2 years ago said, well, why don't we make a brand out of this? So we introduced it in Lahore in 2021. And then in December this year, I'd been talking about it for so long, I said, you know what, I'm doing this. And the people at TriFuel and TriFit came to me and they said, would you be able to do this, with us? And I said, sure. And literally I had a day. I had a day to bake, put everything together. And on the 27th of December, 2022, we launched
Local Bites was born.
That is, it launched in a year and a half, but it was born in there.
That's amazing. So was it easy sort of pivoting from this very corporate lifestyle you had been living before to something that was more sort of passion driven and more on, and like all the stakes are yours to deal with now? How is that transition? How does that feel? And okay, I'll get to that later, but like, how does that feel?
Incredible. I think everything I've done in my life has brought me and converged to this point. All the training that I received, and I've had some incredible mentors. My first boss was Akib Malik. Can you imagine the attention to detail? You know how particular he is, and he's the one who taught me about how things should look and combine and, presentation. And then I've had, people like Amir Ibrahim, the current CEO of Jazz. Musharraf Hai was my boss with 2.5 years. She's magnificent. And another dear friend and colleague, Saad Ali, who's also the founder of this brand, Local Bites, who's the CEO of Pakistan Fashion Design Council. So, working with all these people has taught me so much, and it has brought me to the point that I can run Local Bites like a professional business. It has all the systems and processes in place. We have daily order sheets, we have inventory plans, we have a 3-year strategy in place. We have branding.
You have a really great Instagram account. Like, it's so much fun going through all the posts because you've thought of everything.
Well, it's an evolutionary process, because as I've lived and worked in the digital world for the last at least the last 10 years, it is evolutionary. But the fact is that we had an amazing team that gets it.
Right.
So Saad, myself, and our social media girl out of Lahore, Hiras, the 3 of us, and Amar, our videographer, we're all sort of battling it out, and now from different places and spaces, but it kind of worked. 3 of us are foodies, 1 of us isn't.
Yeah, no?
And so for him, it's like, it has to look good. I will not eat it unless it good looks. Your food looks really good. It has to, because why? It jo dikhta hai, wo bikhta hai.
Yeah, I had to be on a shoot where Anjum was doing food photography for her brand, and I was technically fasting. I was just like, no, I cannot. She was like, "Ek cheese try kar." I was like, it looks amazing, but if I fall for it now.
But the fact is, there was not a drop of sugar in it. Not even a grain.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe that if there are,
It looks too good for me to trust it.
this is what I'm saying. Ananya has created nature, and the answer to everything lies in nature.
Yeah.
I need almonds, dark chocolate, a little bit of monk fruit sugar, and butter and eggs, and you can create some of the most mouth-watering cakes, desserts, and we even started making flourless chocolate cake. And my mom was like, I can't believe this does. She's diabetic.
Yeah.
Can't believe this doesn't have sugar.
And I can have as much as I want. Exactly.
And looks like it's oozy and gooey. And the way and our chocolate chunk cookies, I guarantee you, when you snap with it too, a bit of chocolate melts out.
Oh my God, you're top. What's it on design? Oh my God.
Why can't you eat it? And how can't it be good for you?
Yeah.
I honestly believe we're there to create a movement where we want people to eat clean and eat amazing. Why not?
Yeah, that's amazing. So I have a question. I'm a massive advocate, and I think I also try to promote it on my account, that women get very caught up, and young women get very caught up in timelines. Like, I see so many 20-year-olds, and I'm very active on Twitter. I see so many 20-year-olds and even like early 30-year-old women being like, is this it? Have I like burnt out? Am I a washed out person now because I missed the boat? I missed, like, my 20s are gone. I didn't launch anything. I didn't do anything. I didn't achieve anything. And I'm just like, you really need to pay attention to what's going on around you. And you started this low-cal bites like into your 40s. And I'm
49.
Yeah.
I started this when I was 48.
And I started
when I was 47. But the fact is that, yes, I did start it very late in life. I have been dabbling in cooking. I do turkey dinners.
Yeah.
Like a full-on Thanksgiving turkey dinner or New Year's Eve or a Christmas dinner. I do make them.
I'm on your guest list now.
And you're welcome anytime. But I've been involved with food all my life. I mean, I remember I was 17, like with my mother, she said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a chef. And she said, but this is in the 80s.
Yeah.
Today, she's like, hi, tum ban jati. Maine kaha, I am.
Yeah.
I have learned it. I have studied it.
And there's nothing wrong with you doing it right now at 49.
Yeah, I think,
there's just this negative branding ke ek point pe aake you're just done.
No, there is no. I honestly think when the time is right place, right time, right peoples. We obviously believe in that, and it's a cheesy line from the.
Well, that's what Sister Please is. That's what Sister Mia is.
The fact is that it's true. It happens when it happens, and when you just have to get up and do it. Like you got up and started the podcast.
Yeah, just did, right?
Yeah, and everything fell into place. Is exactly the same that happened to me. I even had all the pans I needed to do the baking. They were in my drawer. I bought them years ago. Yeah, and I realized that I had in the lady who works with me at home said, but the सारे आपके पास हैं तो आप किसका इंतजार कर रही हैं? I even had all the whisks and the mixers and everything. I even had dark chocolate, Yeah, and I said, how did they think so? What am I waiting for? And I did. And then when I did, alhamdulillah, it just feels like joy every single day.
And that's the thing, like, I feel like socially there's been so much negative branding against women aging. Where like, and I'm sorry I'm stuck on this because it's so amazing to me that you are so passionate and so rejuvenated and you're so alive when you're talking about low-cal bites, that it should be a testimony to anybody that there is no set timeline for when you will follow your passion or when you will launch that great thing that you've been waiting to do. It's just about keeping your eye on the goal, and that's what you've done this whole time. You've been doing all these corporate jobs, but that goal of like eventually starting your own food brand was always there. It was just about timing.
Yes, absolutely. I've been talking about it. I've been writing a cookbook, and it was quite an interesting. That's sort of kind of what kick-started it, because I would talk about I would meet people in the various positions that I held, and I would have strike conversations with them. And eventually it would always be about food. And then they would write down a recipe, or I said, well, write a recipe for me. And so I have butter chicken from my friend Arya, who's the current Canadian ambassador to Kuwait. Well, I have recipes from my friend Shauna, who lives in Nova Scotia. I have recipes from people I met in Hong Kong. And they just wrote them very nicely for me, scribbled them down, and I wanted to make a cookbook in which I put all that food. So, for example, you take lemon, chicken, garlic, and cilantro, which is dhania, and you can create a Mexican dish, you can create a French dish, you can create an Indian Pakistani dish, you can create a Thai dish, right? Can you see the line? I'm just finding any fun as you talk about that. Yeah, it's food diplomacy, and we connect. When we can't connect over anything else, we connect over food. Yeah, families come together. One of my passions is to start children on healthy eating. What's happened is, because moms are working, children are not being given that attention to when they start weaning, when they start picking up eating food. If you remember, you were fed in very small pieces, and your mother was talking to you when you were eating. Now the children have an iPad in front of them, and I read about it in these books that I read on milestone development in the case, because I have this was doing it about my own son, and they said if you put a tablet in front of a child, that meal is a very important learning development for them. Picking up that piece of food and putting it in his mouth is fine motor skills. But more than that, it's the conversation that takes place between mother and child. If he's sitting and looking at an iPad, that ain't happening. So I'm passionate about getting children and mother. I'd even go to far say and help mothers create the meal plans, give them everything they need, and so that they can sit and engage with their children during that time. Because while she's cooking and feeding the child, she has so many other things to do after work.
So Anjum, you talked about being a single parent, but then you've also built this very vast career in the corporate sector, and at the same time you've now launched your own brand, and at the same time you're constantly talking about your son and being a very involved parent. How are you managing, or how have you managed to do all of this?
So something that a working mother always deals with is guilt. Guilt becomes your best friend when you're working and you have a child, because you know that your primary responsibility is towards your child, because you have to, because there's nobody else that can be that caregiver. I'm very, very lucky. I've had parents that supported me when I was married. My in-laws, my mother-in-law, God bless her day today, she's my ex-mother-in-law, but I still think of her as my mother. And she, was still very close. And so she's always been a huge support. Even my son's dad, he may not have been the best husband to me, but he's the best father that my son could ever have asked for. In fact, I think he was more involved with him than I was. And so I had this incredible support system, his chacha and his chachi when Jin was about 5. And then when we moved to Karachi, my parents. And I've had help at home that has been around for over 15 years. And also one that's been around since he was born. So I have a very good ecosystem, but I've had to, for example, I was in Dubai last year. I put cameras everywhere in the house, and they were two-way cameras, so that when he woke up in the morning, the first person whose voice he heard was mine. And then in the evening when he was having dinner, I'd be on the phone with him, and then I'd talk to him till he went to bed. So I was making sure that those hours, and even when I was working, I'd always set aside between 5 and 7:30 and said, I can't be disturbed during this time because this time is his.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I try and practice that till today. He's getting older now. He's going to be 10 in a couple of weeks. But that closeness, and also children are very resilient. They're not creatures of habit. You cannot mess with their routine. And so I make sure that he has a very clear routine regardless of where I am. And that if that is maintained, and that I make sure that I'm involved and I'm there as the authority or the answers to all his questions. If he calls me in a meeting, I pick up the phone.
Yeah, because then then it's an
order. That he's my priority. And I tell everybody, I said, I'm so sorry. My son is calling me. I'm not with him right now. I need to address this. And I walk out and I take those calls, and I make sure that whoever I work with also realizes the fact that my being a parent is children can't manage on their own. The human child can't manage till he's 18.
Yeah.
Right? He needs me. And it'll be less and less. But during these development years, I've tried to make sure that and plus he has an amazing school. The school, myself and him, the three of us have sort of, come together and made him be the best that he can be. Yeah. So that's it. It's prioritization. It's all about sitting down. You map your work. You're working with a brand. You map the brand. Why wouldn't you do that with your child? Then put those routines in place. Put those meetings in place. Put those health checks in place so that child, like, we've learned all these things. I say this all the time. We pick our words so carefully when we talk to co-workers. We pick our words so carefully when we're writing emails to strangers. How are we when we speak to our children and our family?
Yeah.
They're the ones we take to love the most.
So a lot of the times, and I feel like I want to talk about this, that a lot of the times our experiences come from a place of privilege. That, my mother is also a single parent. She had these parents who were just like, come home. Don't worry about it. Just pack the kids up and just bring them home. You were coming from that same experience. Your in-laws were like, so many women don't have that support system, but at the same time, they have to go out and work and they have to sort of be there for the kids. How do you think society can do better by these mothers? How do you think we can make it easier? Because what they need to do is not going to change.
Absolutely. And that changes is because the workplace needs to change. The workplaces have changed. Post-COVID, people have become more aware. There's been a consciousness that has come out. And then people who are in this situation today are much luckier than people I knew who were in the similar situation as me, because they didn't have the luxury of dumping their children on their parents, which I've always, that word, dumping their children on their parents, I use that because that's what was thrown at me. But you can easily tell that.
Yeah, that judgment. What was the judgment you had to face?
Immense judgment. Obviously, when you take a decision like that, and I am. That's why, as a supervisor of people who are single parents, or parents in general, I've always tried to use that experience and that feeling that I felt. People are extremely judgmental, and they, unfortunately, I've even had issues in my 30s when I was, not married. I had people tell me, well, why are you a director in a company? Why aren't you married? And this was an HR director who said this to me. Oh, wow. And I looked at him and I said, because that's my choice right now, right? And it's I think it's unusual that for someone, and he was in an MNC, and he asked me this question. I've also had witnessed conversations where in a very big multinational in Islamabad, a gentleman told his subordinate who was pregnant for the third time that this is the third time you've been pregnant in 4 years. So what's wrong with you? Don't you know how to make sure that doesn't happen?
Wow.
And he was a man, and obviously he was looking at it in terms of productivity because she kept going on mat leave, right? And so he was like, I have to keep, making sure organizations need to be more empathetic, and they are becoming that. It's the question of who blinks first, right? So if your biggest companies in the country are going towards empathy, are going towards equity in terms of workplace norms, and realizing that every single person's situation is not the same. And if you want a productive individual, you have to give them certain allowances in order to ensure that they have the peace of mind to give you the best. So basically, you asked me what society can do to support this. So let's talk about society. Let's break it down. What can your family do? Right? Some people don't have the luxury of a enabling support system. Well, there are friends that become family. Yeah, right? You turn to people who become your support system. I lived in Islamabad, and I remember there were 3 other mothers. If I was traveling somewhere, they would always be there to pick up my son, for him to go and have a meeting with them. So I turned to them. I have the same here. If my parents are unavailable or indisposed, then my friends step in and help out.
Yeah.
Especially when I was away.
Yeah.
There was always a mother that I could call up and say, my son is feeling low. Please, can you talk to him? That was how just one of the ways society helped me. The other way was the school. So when I spoke to I'm on the parent advisory team of my son's school, and they wanted to do a father and child day. I said, well, please don't do that, because my son cannot bring his father and he would be devastated if he can't be a father. So I created that consciousness.
Yeah.
And everybody else jumped in and said, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The third thing is your workplace.
Yeah.
Talk to them. There is a human side to everybody. And I'm not talking about your HR and your HR head or your talk to the owners, the people in positions, especially your boss, and spell it out to them and say, I need that little bit of leeway, because if my child is sick, there is nobody there to take him to the doctor except me.
But also in a post-pandemic world, isn't there, and I think this should be easier now, because अब तो employers को भी understanding हो गई है कि flexibility में काम खत्म हो जाता है. Obviously, we had the work from home situation, we had the certain number of hours.
ही खत्म होता, काम नहीं खत्म होता, लेकिन flexibility में काम नहीं खत्म होता, बल्कि productivity increase.
Exactly, yes. मतलब उनको होता है ना कि हमारा काम complete हो जाए, रुकना नहीं चाहिए. So I think now there should be more consciousness and more flexibility for mothers, because हमने समझ लिया है कि she doesn't need to be sitting at her desk 8 से 5 बजे या 9 से 5 बजे. She can step out, she can do her responsibilities as long as she knows कि आज मैंने ये काम deliver करना है. Leave it up to her.
It doesn't matter how long you take.
Yes.
You finish your work in 3 hours.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah. We're all adults. We don't need to be supervised all the time.
This is the trust that organizations place in them.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Right? So I honestly believe that the world is heading towards that. And COVID had a huge part to play.
Yeah.
Because you had no choice.
Yeah.
You were doing the same.
You had to kicking and screaming acknowledge the fact कि आपके सामने वो employee नहीं बैठा हुआ, लेकिन you have to trust कि वो काम कर लेगा.
I was blessed because my boss during COVID was Musharraf Five.
Yeah.
And, to work with someone like her, she had never experienced anything like this. She was a humanity worker chairperson in L'Oreal, Peak sector.
Yeah.
Director and all that. Incredible woman. And she organized us in such a way that we'd have a check-in in the morning and a check-in in the evening, and then we had to do our tasks in between.
Yeah.
And we managed it.
Yeah.
Managed it really well. And we worked as hard. I think we worked more efficiently because, we had those calls and somebody had a baby that was crying in the background, and she'd say, well, why don't you go and deal with your child?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Come back in when you've settled her, or that, if there's some noise taking place and you're on a call, and she'd be like, well, sort it out and then we'll connect. So if somebody like her, who had never experienced anything except the 9 to 8 or 9 to 7, she came from the corporate sector of the 90s, 80s and 2000s, right?
I mean, it's 9 to 5 on paper. We all know how long it is.
Exactly. And she came from that world, but she adjusted.
Yeah.
And so if she could, I think everybody can. It is an easy thing to do. And again, as I said, humanity has to come in. You need to see things in a more humane manner. I know I did. I've always tried to empathize with the personal situations of my team.
Yeah. So, Abhi, we had a bit of a break, and Anjum and my technical support team, Sidra, were having this conversation about sometimes being the only woman in the room, or being the only woman in an industry, and about how sometimes people will just choose the male professional in the situation because they assume that the woman will not be able to do it. Ijazat nahi milegi, ye hoga, wo hoga. And you have also been in those situations where you've been the only woman in the room. How did you manage to stick it out? Because, either the privilege bhi kabhi-kabhi kaam nahi karti because the gender sort of gets in the way. Like, no matter how privileged you are, people's perception of our gender and about ki pata nahi manage kar sakengi ya nahi, yeah, will she hack it? How did you do it?
Don't be truthful about it.
Yeah, please.
I taken advantage.
Yeah.
I have always taken advantage of the fact that I was the only woman.
Yeah.
And I remember being 16, 17 years old and being on set and being the only girl. But there were certain things that were done for me, allowances that were made for me. Like the director would drop me back home himself.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be sent home in the van.
Yeah.
There have been occasions where I've actually, when I was in college, I went and spoke to, I was doing a degree in filmmaking in Canada, and I did when I was in, it was a 2-year program, and I told them, I said, when I joined the first year, by the third month, I knew that everything that they were teaching me, I'd known and I'd done for years and years and years. So I went in and I said, I want to sit the final exam for this year right now. And I did it and did well. So I went to them and I said, I'm the first woman from a third world country that's in your school, and how come you aren't taking care of me? Right?
Yeah.
I made them feel like it was their responsibility and it was their honor that I was a Muslim woman from a third world country doing really well. And I said, so why? So then they gave me a scholarship.
Oh.
And again, I asked. You see, I learned very young that if you don't ask, the answer could be yes or no. But chances are it will be yes.
Right.
So don't be intimidated by it. And actually say, but you've got me here in this position. Yes, I'm a woman, but can I do it? And sometimes that's exactly what they're looking for. They want to see that confidence in you. So honestly speaking, I think you have to believe in yourself. Honestly speaking, you just have to know that you're that good or you're that capable. And you need to prove it through consistency.
Yeah.
There was a time when I was the only director amongst 45 people in a company and the only woman director out of 45.
Yeah.
So they planned an excursion, and it was the activities that they were doing were all male. There was things that only men could do.
Yeah.
And then I actually got up and said, well, what about me? Do you want me to sit this one out? And then they were like, no, that's not what we like. I said, no, you see, you don't consider it.
Yeah.
But it paved the ways for many, many, many other women. So I worked with trailblazing women. I mean, I remember when I was in my 2000s, there were women that were in leadership positions that I looked up to. And then, alhamdulillah, I've had the opportunity to be one of those women and be mentored. But then I made sure that while I was doing it, I was obviously clearing the path for more to come.
Yeah.
And there's a responsibility on the shoulders to see this young lady sitting here, managing the camera, managing everything. Reminded me of the days when to see a woman, and especially on the technical side, was an anomaly. And it's wonderful to see her family progress.
And she's so good at it. Shout out to Siddha. Okay, so one of the questions that I had was that sometimes, there are some socially approved professions that women can go into. Like if a girl wants to work, teacher बन जाओ, तो अपनी fashion designer बन जाओ, तो अपनी कपड़ों की collection निकाल लो, या beauty parlor चला लो. Where even when we're encouraging women, it's sometimes it's on the woman to sort of do the research and do the whole self-assessing herself. That I'm good at this, so I will go into, maybe I'll go work in an MNC, maybe I'll go there. But socially, जो हम comfortable होते हैं कि लड़की काम कर रही हो, तो आप teacher बन जाओ, या fashion designer बन जाओ, या parlor में grooming का course कर लो. How do we sort of take that conversation away and just leave it to the girl to decide what she wants to do, or have people conditioned into giving better advice?
So, in today's day and age, alhamdulillah, the schools are helping a lot. They have counselors to guide you and help you figure out where it is that you're going in your life. Some of them are even working on personal branding.
Yeah.
From a very young age.
Yeah.
So what is the story that a child is telling when they're going to university or college? When you're talking about professions, I'm the perfect, case in point, because my family wanted me to take that path and study economics, and I didn't want to study economics. So I came back after doing 3 months of economics and saying, I really don't want to do this. And my parents were like, okay, then you're on your own. So I went to DHA College down the road and then my graduation. and then I saved money, and then I went to the film school that I wanted to go to. And after coming back here and joining an advertising agency, I kind of felt that, I had more to offer, and 9/11 happened. So I joined CNN and became a war journalist. Oh, really? I went the war in Afghanistan. And people thought I was insane because I was a girl from Karachi who had never even lived in Islamabad. And there I was on a plane and sitting in Peshawar, living there, covering what was happening on the other side. And I did that, and I went to Kabul and Kandahar and spent time there understanding. So I said, and my parents were okay with it. Alhamdulillah, they always asked me that, why would you take the path less trodden? Because the other path is so simple. I come from a family of 4 generations of lawyers, and I could easily join my dad's law firm, and the rest, as this is history, I would have gotten the same clients he had. I am an advocate of sorts, but not a legal advocate. I do have causes that I passion. Now it's food and healthy eating. But it took me a while to convince them, and sometimes I just didn't ask. Yeah. And honestly speaking, it was stubborn on my part, but I just said, I'm going to be this. And to say that, and stand up and say, nay, I want to do this and I'm going to do it, just watch me. Yeah. I didn't ask them for money. I had earned enough. I didn't ask anyone for support. I bought my own ticket. I went to the college of my choice, and I did it on my own dime. I didn't make it their problem because they think, paise zaya karna hai. And I wouldn't want them to think that ever. Later on, they did support me. Yeah. But till that point, I put my money where my mouth is. I worked out a plan. I gave tuitions while I was in college. I paid for my own college fees. I worked over there in the film industry to make sure that I had enough money to cover my expenses. Yeah. Right? You can do it. Like I said, the training is in all of us. You just have to be systematic and methodical and just, like I said, learn from the corporate sector. You have a strategy in place. Implement that in your own life. Yeah. Put those goals. And I'm a former athlete. I used to swim. And as an athlete, I can say we have a goal, right? You want to win the gold. When you want to win the gold, getting there is just a journey. Yeah. So you need to know what your goal is.
So this sounds like some lessons that you've learned in the corporate sector. What are some other lessons that you've learned?
There are only 2 things you'll ever be remembered for. And I'm borrowing this line from Musharraf. The brands you build and the people you develop. Yeah. And if the people you develop are a testimony to your ability as a leader, right? If your young manager ends up becoming the head of department or the head of the company, then you have a small part to play in that. How did you enable that? Alhamdulillah, the girls and the boys that I have, young men and women that I've worked with, number of them are running their own companies today. And it gives me such a sense of pride when I think of them, and see them follow their dreams, and hope that I had a small part to play in them realizing it. The other lesson that I learned is ask, speak up. If you have that dream job and it's just ahead of you, apply for it. Figure out later what you need to do to get the job done. Yeah, take that chance. Don't have regrets when you sit across the table from someone and say, it's been so many years since I've done this. Are there any regrets in your life? There shouldn't be any. Because if we don't live the life and we don't follow our dreams, then what's the point of living? I'll give you the example of an 87-year-old man I know who told me, I feel 18, but this body of mine just won't let me do it. And I said, I'm at the end of my life. I don't know how much longer I have to live. But I still have so much I want to do.
Yeah.
And you meet people like that. You said, I want to be in the same position.
Yeah.
Keep evolving. Learn new skills. I mean, I'm a digital immigrant. When I grew up, dial-up came in the late 90s where we had the dee-doo.
Yeah.
From there to be head of communications for one of the leading telecom companies, digital companies in the country, was such a a blessing and to change my way of work to be digital in today's world. And I'm on a podcast. I used to host a talk show. I thought on television. And I'm sitting on a podcast and I'm a part of something that is in the digital world. I mean, when somebody talked to me about ChatGPT, I sat there ferociously typing on it saying, is my profession going to be replaced? And I realized, no, it won't be. Why? Because you had need a smart person to write.
Exactly.
For them to then come up with whatever it is that you're asking. But the brain and the instructions have to be written by you. But so we're not going away.
We're not going anywhere. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Anju, for giving me your time, being here today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us on Sister Peas with me, Khizra Munir, and my guest, Anjum Nida Rahman. Thank you.